How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Today, you know him, Tait Duryea, founder, principal over at Turbine Capital. Offline, he just told me they've raised over $80 million, which is incredible. I've talked to him about this before on this program. Just a great example of what happens if you just stick to it and execute. And you've been doing it for years. Now you got some really cool things going up. We're going to talk in a second about how to keep your community engaged, how to get them to show up live, and even invest in your deal without coming off as salesy. Tait, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Hunter. Always great to see you.
80 million is a huge number. For people that are not familiar with you, talk us about your professional background, how you got into real estate, and we'll talk about some of the tactics of doing these live presentations.
Yeah. Thanks. Again, always a pleasure to be on with you. And honestly, a lot of my success and our company's success has to do with you. So thank you. Got connected with you all the way back in 2020 before RaiseMasters was even a thing. CFC mentorship program, went through that and been building my company since then. So about 6 years ago. Yeah. So I'm an airline pilot by background. I seriously considered going into real estate, entrepreneurship, business right out of high school in a college degree, but ended up following in my family footsteps and pursuing aviation. Really glad I did. I've had an amazing career flying airplanes. I love the aviation space, but I never lost that entrepreneurial bug. And I started buying real estate when I was 25 years old. So I bought my first rental property at 25, continued buying real estate. My plan was to buy a couple hundred units. That was going to be my retirement plan. I didn't know anything about syndication or LP investing at the time, but started listening to Bigger Pockets really heavily and heard about the Best Ever Conference, right? So I went to the Best Ever Conference, learned about LP investing, was like, oh my God, okay, this makes way more sense because I can focus on flying instead of flying on my off days across the country to high cash flow markets to buy fourplexes. I'm like, this makes way more sense to just put 50K in somebody else's deal. Fast forward a few years, kind of learned the fund manager side of things, realized that doctor groups had physician groups with private equity firms and had education platforms for doctors. And I just thought, gosh, this is a pretty repeatable business model, even though it's no joke. There are easier ways to make money, I'll tell you that. But it's a repeatable business model in the aviation space because at that time, it didn't exist for pilots. Essentially taking hey, I'm a physician, I'm going to raise capital from other physicians, and taking that business model and slapping it down in the aviation space. And so it took quite a long time to get established, but here we are. Yeah, 6 years into the business, we've raised over 80 million. We'll probably approach 100 million in capital raised in 2026. And we're a growing team. We're fairly diversified on asset classes, so it's a fun ride.
You partner with operators in various niches, allowing you to be diversified. I'm very fortunate. We've actually partnered on a deal before, just closed Azara Tempe, which is a deal that Tyler and I continue to be just super excited about. And so there's also people listening to this being like, how does this whole thing work? It works like this. You as an operator can and should dedicate time to raising capital. But another thing you should dedicate time to is partnering with other groups that focus on finding good operators. It's just a total no-brainer, whether it's an extra $500,000 or even $10 million. It's just a very high leverage activity to think about who you might want to partner with as a capital partner. And so a lot of Tait's business, yes, conducting due diligence, finding good deals, but usually these are vetted deals that operators have already pierced through. An operator might have gone through 100. They're going to do one. They send it over to Tait, and Tait has 10, and he picks one of 10 as opposed to one of 10,000 or whatever the math is on that. But
I think that's worth unpacking before we move on, because the idea of a doctor who's just putting together a little fund of funds into someone else's deal, that's on one side of the spectrum. There's also firms like ours that do light asset manage it, that conduct insane amounts of due diligence, that will put together the entire marketing package around a deal. Keep in mind, if you're an operator out there and you're banging your head against the wall, like, man, I really don't want to learn this capital raising game, but it's like I have to because we have to raise money in order to continue doing business. There are firms like ours out there that everybody has a unique skill set. I don't want to spend my days underwriting 100 multifamily properties a month and then being the boots on the ground asset manager, property manager, et cetera. That is just not my skill set. It's not what I'm interested in. What I like doing is finding those unique stories, those unique deals coming in as the capital raising, investor relations, marketing arm of the project, and really truly integrating with that sponsor, and where they can focus on what they're good at. If they're good at finding great deals, putting them under contract and negotiating great terms, and then operating, maybe it's development, maybe it's they're really good at building, but they're not good at putting together a pitch deck and telling the story to investors. We can come in and breathe life into that story and really integrate, and we'll be part of the GP team. We're not coming in to just copy someone's marketing deck and sell it down to our group. We're coming in to really participate in that project, but in the capacity of marketing, capital raising, investor relations, and fund administration. There's that whole side of the business that might make some people sick to their stomach, where it's like, that's our core competency.
Yes. And I myself raised quite a lot of money, done a ton of deals, create a lot of marketing initiatives. When we partner on deals, I'm not like, oh, no, thanks, Turbine, we got it. We're like, actually, that's a really good point. We should totally do that. So like, just so you know, like, even if you have experience, people that are really dedicated to specific things, there's value add in partnerships. And I think that's mutual, where you get a lot out of really going deep. Now, in order to have that conversation with me, you got to bring a lot to the table. And so if you're just getting started, look, if you can get $500,000 across the finish line, that gets you a good seat at the table in terms of a meeting with really any operator in the non-institutional space. But as you grow your business, you can negotiate for more flexibility, more control rights, maybe interest in the GP. And this is the way you scale one of these capital raising businesses. But it's also how you scale an operating business, by finding good capital partners that can partner with in various degrees. So I want to give them this tidbit of like how, as an example, one of the things that you're doing that maybe other operators aren't doing is this repeatable focus on engaging your network. What is the thing that you recently executed that you've seen a big lift in terms of keeping that engagement high?
So we were talking before the show. Obviously, we have a lot of moving parts within the company right now, but something that we came up with about a year ago and we launched is a series called Hangar Talk. And that's an ode to our aviation background, right? Pilots hanging around the hangar talking about flying. But it could be the same format for anyone. You could call it anything you want, right? The idea is that once a month, we do a Zoom meeting, not a webinar, a meeting where everybody can come in and you can see all the other participants, and it's just an open forum. The genesis of this was I was sitting on multiple investor calls a year and a half ago, and people would be asking me questions, and I was thinking, gosh, if I could only just be in an open forum right now. This is such a good question. The answer that I have for this is just one-to-one right now. If we could one-to-many this, so many people would get value out of hearing the answer to this question, right? It's like, why are we doing this in a vacuum? So I said, hey, why don't we launch this series? And actually, I think it was Brittany that came up with it, our vice president of operations, but genius. And so once a month, we host Hangar Talk. In fact, it's tomorrow. We're recording this on May 12th. Our monthly Hangar Talk is tomorrow. We get 60 to 80 people that show up to it. Now, there are some nuances to how to run this, and we've played with some different formats, but I'll kick it back to you, see if you have any leading questions before I jump into that.
No, yeah, let's get to it. Let's talk about structure and then like how we discuss next steps, education, call to action, all of it.
So I think the key is if you launch this and you just call it an AMA and ask me anything, and you're like, all right, welcome everyone, who's got questions? And it's just silent, right? It's like nobody knows where to start. That's a huge, it just doesn't, it's not sexy. It's not interesting. Nobody wants to show up for that, right? So initially we did, the whole thing was unrecorded. That's, hey, you have to come live, otherwise you're going to miss it. But, and I'll talk more about the recording later, but in terms of the how to avoid the crickets, we always start with an educational topic. So we start with some housekeeping items. And there's always housekeeping items, right? Some people put out a monthly newsletter. We do a quarterly. There's always things happening within the company, new deals coming up, things that we're thinking about in the macroeconomic environment. We did a UBIT blocker on a deal that we were raising for a couple of months ago, and people were really hungry to know more about that UBIT blocker. And so we just
pause real quick because this is actually an important piece here. So UBIT blocker, super nuanced topic. It's actually not done a lot, but it's super relevant for Tait's specific audience, which is high income pilots. And so they build this awesome retirement plan, but then there's this issue with UBIT and UDFI for those that don't know. But he has now gotten his audience of high income pilots where they know they can invest their retirement in real estate. They know the challenges, the pain points, and all that. And he's taken them along this journey. So now you're taking someone who's focused on being a pilot and getting them trained up where they're like, oh, how do I solve this problem of UDFI? Guess what? We're going to now talk about it. Think about that from a customer journey standpoint. He's doing this one-to-many to make his sales process easier. So I didn't want that to just be swept under the rug.
Yeah.
That is not how I would typically, if I wanted to attract pilots, I wouldn't be like, UBIT blockers, but he's training his people to be trained up so that they can click and buy, right? And know what they're doing.
And to be fair, we have our podcast platform as well, 150 something episodes. And so most of our audience are listeners to the podcast. We talk about a lot of this stuff on the show. And so they have gotten their feet wet, but when they come to Hangar Talk, it's okay. They want to hear something that's relevant to what's happening at Turbine. Okay, this deal is open right now, and we just built a blocker. We're going to take the next 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about what this structure is, how it works, and then we're going to turn it open to open forum Q&A. Now, I find that initially when we launched this series, we didn't record anything. Pilots have irregular schedules, right? So every time people will be like, oh, come on, can't you record it? I couldn't make it this month. So we said, okay, we'll have the best of both worlds. We're going to record the first half, and then the second half will be unrecorded. So a half hour is recorded. The second half, we turn the recording off, and it goes, hey, everybody can ask their dumb questions with no fear that somebody's going to watch it on replay, right? So we find that particularly during the first half, people tend not to come off of mute. They type lots of questions are coming through the chat, and that's a key. Make sure your Zoom settings are set so that the participants can actually chat with everyone. That's
just Zoom settings
pro
in general,
tip.
You gotta learn them.
Yeah,
sure.
Make sure that chat's working before you dive in. But people tend to be in the chat, and then TJ, our investor relations guy, will read them out. I'll answer them. And then once we come up to the halfway point, we say, okay, anything else that needs to go on the recording, we'll get that out. And then we'll go, okay, thanks for listening. And we cut it, and then we go to just open forum unrecorded. And that's where people seem to feel a little bit more comfortable coming off mute, and it becomes a little bit more interactive.
How has this looked in terms of getting capital across the finish line, or even the sales process as a whole? Because I know deep down, that's really what you're doing it for. It might not be the first goal, but at the end of the day, that's how we're going to measure success in some way. How is it working in terms of the pulse of your audience, and also just, do people commit? Do they show up to a Q&A and then end up investing with you?
It helps. I think that it's more useful to look at this in terms of its effect on every stage of the pipeline.
Yeah.
Because if someone comes gets onto our email list, and part of the drip series, one of the emails in our drip series talks about Hangar Talk. It's, hey, you're invited. And we also, I'll give you another really good tip. There are software programs out there where you can load your events calendar into a calendar, and people can subscribe to it. So just like you can subscribe to someone's Google Calendar, people can actually subscribe to your calendar. So it just shows up. Hangar Talk is on Wednesday, and it's on their phone because they're subscribed to the Turbine Capital calendar. So that's how we package that is, hey, you're invited. And when they go to add the calendar event, it actually adds the calendar overall. So it adds all the Hangar Talks, and it adds all of our in-person events and our webinars and things like that to their calendar. If you're brand new, no, you're probably not going to invest just because you came to a Hangar Talk, but you're going to be a lot warmer, right? It's okay, cool. These are real people, right? It's not like some ivory tower that is inaccessible. If someone's warm, it's going to make them warmer. We're going to talk about a specific deal and how we're looking at things, and they're going to be hearing questions that other investors are asking that they didn't think to ask.
Other smart people.
Right. So it moves them further along in the pipeline. And maybe if they were on the fence and considering something, they might take action. And it also gives people a broader perspective and better context on where we are today in the broader context of 2026 and the deal flow that we have, because we might have a couple deals that are coming down the pike that people maybe have heard about and they were waiting to get details on before they made a decision. So, for example, we just had a fund called the Secured Income Fund. We soft launched that during Hangar Talk last month, and people have been asking about it. They're like, hey, when's that coming? When's that coming? And now we just soft launched, and to massive adoption because we primed the pump with everyone a month ago during Hangar Talk. So it really helps in every stage of the pipeline. It's not a webinar. You're not going in to pitch a deal and hope that people commit funds after the webinar. That's not the point. It's a broader, more holistic, open forum conversation where you're covering what's going on within the organization. You might be familiar with this if you're a W-2 professional working at a large organization. You're the CEO or the COO or some combination of management might have a town hall that occurs every quarter or something like that all the employees can tune into. It's like that.
Totally. It's not lead creation. It's
No.
not a conversion event. It's a lead nurture strategy. And
It's
so
really a community strategy.
that's the case. All of it works together where, yes, you're going to get some people that are on the fence, off the fence. You're going to get some people that are ice cold. I don't trust this guy to, wow. It looks like some people that have been in this world for a while and also have some questions that I wasn't even thinking about asking they're asking, and they're also investing with this person. It's just, those are the kinds of things that can create very high leverage opportunities for you in your business. And obviously, I want to keep this short. I know we can kind of go back and forth this whole time, but one last question, try to keep it like a fire round here. There are certainly people listening to this right now that are like deal junkies. What would you say to them if they're like, outside of partnering with a group like yours, which is definitely something, that's one of the reasons masterminds are so powerful, is you meet people that are doing stuff like what you're doing and you can connect with other people. But for someone who is a deal junkie and they don't envision themselves ever doing a kind of webinar, what, in again, short order, what would you say to them in terms of that specific limiting belief?
Sorry, you're going to have to clarify what you mean by deal junkie. Someone
Hey
who
man,
just
I
wants
don't want to
to,
do webinars. I just want to do
right.
deals.
I just want to operate.
Yep.
Link arms with somebody who likes marketing and who likes doing webinars.
Yeah.
Because you can find a win-win.
Boom.
Richard Branson said once, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a ladder, you're always going to think the fish is deficient, right? So just because you don't excel in marketing and webinars doesn't mean that you're deficient. It means that you have a different skill set and you need to partner with someone who has that other skill set and you can make magic together.
Boom. How can people learn more about you, your business, etc.?
TurbineCap.com, Turbine Capital. You can reach out directly to me, Tait, T-A-I-T, at TurbineCap.com. I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't check it very often. Really, email is probably the best way.
Thanks a bunch, Tait. We will talk soon.
Thanks so much, Hunter.